2. Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. The coming induction of Mike Mussina to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and now the word is out. He's in. I have waited 25 years to have this conversation with Alan McCallum. I was sitting in Riley's Oyster having some grilled oysters there and an ice-cold beer on a 20-degree night, and here comes the WNST text. Of course, sponsored by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Mike Mussina has been voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And my wife grabbed her phone, showed it to me, and there was a little lump in my throat, Alan. I was actually, choked up, a little moved, a little wow, a little... Yeah, that kind of took me a little more by surprise, and it probably speaks to the depth of my relationship with Mike, which is probably right about where you come in, right? I mean, you entered my life. I had my ponytail cut, as I put out on Facebook. You never saw the ponytail as well, but you know,
only in pictures.
Your path and my paths crossed because my dear friend Sue Monday, who hosts radio out on the shore in New Jersey and in Delaware, but Jersey before that, knew you and introduced you to me, and you loved baseball, and I'll let you pick the story up at this point because you probably will tell the story even more interestingly because you came from educated fan guy, to suddenly in the locker room and getting to know these people. So have at it, Alan McCallum. Happy Hall of Fame to Moose. This might be the last awesome conversation we have for a little while, so I want to savor it if that's all right.
It's good to talk to you. I was texting with the little brother of the new Hall of Famer, Mark Mussina, about 5 minutes before it was announced.
My former roommate, who was, by the way, very hygiene-centric. I have nothing negative to report about Mussina. Most of his meals came in a pizza box, and he was a delightful roommate and still a guy that I like very, very much, and you do as well. We share a mutual affection for Mark Mussina, and we also share an affection for Mike, but Mike's a different bird than Mark, and I haven't had a long conversation with Mike since I've been married. So it's been 2 decades, but Mike and I were very close when you and I met, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would never say that I was close with Mike. We had a few conversations. He's certainly more surgical about both his career and his approach to life, as I've witnessed it anyway. Mark is just affable and intelligent and interested in people in a way that is infectious, and you want to be around him.
And he also solves math problems, Mark Mussina. Nobody knows that about him, but yes.
Right. So yeah, we met in summer of '95, and by then Mike's career is well underway. I was thinking.
Well, he was a star then. There was, he was
by then. Yeah.
Yeah. You thought he might be a Hall of Famer at that point, right?
So I mean, I don't know how many people know this. I mean, I came to baseball kind of late for a kid. I liked baseball. We went to games. I knew a little bit, but I really fell in love with baseball in 1989. Actually, I take that back to 1988. Watching the woeful 1988 Baltimore Orioles, only surpassed by the 2018 Baltimore Orioles in their haplessness, and feeling at a time in my life when I needed something to root for, like, hey, these guys need something to root for, someone to root for them. I know what that feels like.
How old were you then, 1989?
In 88, I was 16 and turned 17 during the summer of 89.
So you're my wife's age. You were born in 72, and 72 was the first year I really remember being a baseball fan. I don't remember 71, Clemente, any of that, but 72 and into 73 I remember everything from that moment. Changed my life, Alan. I mean, you know that. People think of me as a football guy, right? And they see me on NFL, whatever. I mean, my baseball thoughts and not the depth of my baseball knowledge supersedes the depth of my football knowledge, and I feel like I'm pretty versed in both. But baseball was by far my first love, and the only reason I fell in love with football is because baseball season ended. Right around the time Burt Jones or Marty Domrez showed up. I never saw Johnny U as a Colt, to give you a little perspective on me, but I think so much of it is what's that first footstep? What's that first place, that first thing? And if the first thing for you, no matter your age, but probably a little different for you being a little older, most baseball baseball fans remember their diapers and their dad. You know what I mean? When they're 3, 4, 5 years old, that's sort of the problem with baseball. They've sort of missed that for the last 30 or 40 years. But so go ahead. So you sort of latched onto this as an adolescent, and 89 was like a lot of fun if you were that age. Girls were involved. It was the place to be. It really, it was the beginning of everything Camden Yards was going to represent.
Baseball is my one, and has been and is my one and only true sports love. And I immerse myself in a way that few people do. But I mean, in 1989, at a point as an adolescent, you have doubts and not sure about how to go about things. And I really liked the way that team played. That there, you had Cal, but aside from that, you had no great stars. And what they did was just play the game fundamentally as well as any team I've ever seen, particularly defensively.
And by the way, I want to just interject. I had Brad Pennington on this week. You must go. It's a must listen. And I know you know Penny a little bit as well.
Sure.
And he talked about how blessed he was to be an Oriole at that time. The Oriole way was still there, very much so. And Brad teaches kids baseball now. He's 50 years old, teaches kids baseball. That's what he does. And and talked about that and how special that was. That when he walked in there was Sutcliffe over there, Ben McDonald over there, Mike Mussina over. Those guys all went about their business a certain way, and so did Cal Ripken, by the way. And we all know that.
Yeah, my first passionate sports memory was a little before this time, 83 World Series, the Orioles had lost Game 1, and I remember going to the Giant right there on Liberty Road that's closed up now. That was my family Giant with my dad to get ice cream for Game 2, and I remember being afraid, like asking Dad, can they still win the World Series? He said, of course they can, and being really excited after that point, and then, remembering them winning it all a few days later.
By the way, I brought that game up, and it was pointed out that the home run to Joe Morgan, the guy who threw the pitch was at the table that I brought it up, and this was at the 35th year reunion, right? I mean, I'm doing the math correct, yeah. Whatever the number was over at the Renaissance 2 months ago. But Alan McCallum is here. We're talking Oriole baseball. So go ahead, pick your story up on Mussina and where we are and love of baseball, because you really, there was a major transition in your life from being a fan to suddenly I put a press pass on you and you're walking around the locker room and Mussina is a star, but a guy that I had a relationship with, therefore sort of kind of he always gave great answers if you had a great question. If you had a bad question, you got a bad answer. I mean, that was sort of Moose, right?
Hey, you got to remember, I mean, for me, and I certainly knew who Jim Palmer was, but I wasn't old enough to or locked in enough to really cherish the memories of him as an Oriole. Watching them. So, I mean, for me, the best season that I had been focused on was Jeff Ballard in 1989. And, I mean, there's never been a greater mirage in sports. Bottom line, Finn McDonald was the Great White Hope. He was the guy that you're supposed to pin your hopes on. And obviously he was a good pitcher for as long as he was healthy. But Mike, from the moment he got there was a precision, and maybe it was just a mirage. I don't know. It certainly doesn't seem that way now that he's going to the Hall of Fame. But I mean, there was a look in his eyes that he understood what he was trying to do, and in a way that I had not seen in any other young pitcher up to that point that I had access to on a nightly basis. Maybe not ever since. And watching him, and sort of the first time thinking, wow, look at the way this guy throws. This is different from the other guys I've seen wear an Orioles uniform. And almost from the beginning of his career, really sort of focusing on what he was doing. And then certainly having, once I got the press pass, once I met you, once I was out there, watching every day how he went about his business. You're right. I mean, Mike was certainly not a chatty guy. And when he was asked good questions, you could see the thought that he was putting into it. It was clear that he cared about his words, and he cared about other people's words. He didn't suffer the standard useless question at the end of a game. He sort of shook his head and waved it off. If he wasn't in a good mood, he might say something a little surly. But he respected and appreciated thoughtful questions.
Well, he loves sports. I mean, that was really the thing on him. That's the thing I've talked to everybody about is, he loved football. He was a kicker. He played safety. I think he played cornerback and wide receiver.
He's coaching kids sports now. I mean, he's invested in the sports world and wants to see it at all levels.
I mean, he ran the March Madness pools. He was a hell of a basketball player. He built a basketball gym, inspired by Cal Ripken's gym, up in Montoursville. There's just so many, incredible stories along the way, and him waiting to get in, and his Oriole-ness through all of this, right? Like, this is the end. This is the last one. I don't know if you and I are going to pile in the car on a 105-degree day and, make our trip up to Cooperstown. You've been to Cooperstown, Alan?
I was there for Eddie. I was there for Cal. Seen them both.
Okay, and so where does Mussina rate on this as a guy that not only you rooted for and watched come up and become a player, but also watched leave, and you were the guy there with the microphone standing in the dugout talking to me about him leaving, and you were the guy sitting in the studio the day that, the pinstripe press conference thing happened, and the pictures with George Steinbrenner that I shared this week in chapter, all the history that I shared in the Peter Principles of how this happened and what a knucklehead Peter Angelos was throughout all of this and what it represents. I mean, 30 seconds after he's inducted, 30 seconds, I go on my Facebook, the first question is he going to go in as an Oriole or a Yankee? And I'm thinking to myself, that never should have been the question. That's the built-in sad part of this tale that had no happy ending for him to win a championship and no happy ending for him to get a statue. And certainly he was victimized in this for a guy who made $87 million because he never wanted to leave. You know that. I know that. That's not fake. That's not something we report later on. This was a completely botched fork in the road for the Orioles. All that whole period was that really 2 decades later, as we have all the gray coming in now, Alan, that really it sort of paints a sad tale beyond hey, Mike Mussina got in and we love Mike and we were friends with Mike and weren't those memories great, and sharing old pictures and memories and stories and how he pitched in 97 and, all of that. And when he took the line drive off his head, the Hasselman brawl, all the parts of the lore that mean something to guys like you and me 25 years later, and it means something that he's getting into the Hall of Fame. I don't know that it means any buses are leaving from here to go to Cooperstown to watch him get inducted on a hill where 99.9% of the people are there for Mariano Rivera, and they also believe Mike Mussina was a Yankee.
Yeah, I've been watching Mark's feed on social media, seeing all the people closer to where he lives, putting up pictures of him in pinstripe. It's been pretty hard. Look, it's pretty clear for me. I mean, for my lifetime, for my experiences, Mike Mussina is the greatest Orioles pitcher I've personally ever watched on any regular basis. I mean, I don't think that's a shock in the dark. It's shock for anybody to hear. In terms of where he is as an Oriole, I mean, Cal to me is the greatest Oriole, and Frank, Brooks, Jim, we know that. But for my lifetime, Mike is a number 2 for what he did, for what he was. And yes, it's easy to see him in the pinstripes. I saw him for 8 years. Feared it before it happened. Certainly had an inside knowledge that it was probably going to happen when it did. But it's also important to remember that he did take a below market deal to stay in Baltimore, and that yes, I mean I think a lot of people know that he wanted to stay, and I think a guy who was at that point a recently new owner to Major League Baseball who probably thought, oh, this guy will stay because that's what he's supposed to do. That's not the way it works. That's not the way the world works, and I'm sure there are lots of other things. The Orioles were well known for dragging their feet and doing things slowly and under Peter Angelos, and that's gone on for the last 25 years. And
Mike saw that up close. Mike was an economics major. Mike was in Stanford. I mean, all the things. Again, if anyone is interested in the history, I've shared it. I may share it on the audio side before the weekend as we get to Atlanta for Super Bowl 53 coverage. We're going to be on Radio Row. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Strategic Factory Marketing, printing promotional goods of all kinds. If you need signage, printed, branded apparel, they are there for you at Strategic Factory. Also, our friends at Lifebridge Health Sports Medicine Institute, Knowings Mills. Dr. Kevin Crutchfield joining us every every other week, as well as Dr. Craig Bennett, the new game plan for sports-related injuries. I've got my, on the webcam now, I finally got my Stan the Man Stasiak thing that I wear to bed every night now. I got to get it on the right way here, but it looks like I'm about to deliver the heart punch. But this thing is like fix my elbow. It's like super awesome. So thank you, Dr. Craig Bennett, for doing that. Lightbridge Health Sports Medicine Institute. Also helping my wife get ready for her half marathon she's training for. So shout out to Josh Levinson and our friends at Charm City Run as well for just treating us like family over there the other day as my wife getting outfitted and getting ready for all of this good stuff. Also, all of our Super Bowl coverage brought to you by Curio Wellness, the holistic wellness as well as cannabis education. Doing the 101 over there. You can learn more at CurioWellness.com as well. And they also have the spa there, an educational studio, yoga. They do it all up there. York Road, just south of Timonium Road, Curio Wellness. Go see my friend Dr. Brian Sanderhoff and the good doctor up there, and let him hook you up with some good education. And there's a lot of great stuff on the website for education as well, CurioWellness.com. And Brian joined me. He's out in the buy at Toyota.com Audio Vault this week as well, talking some football too. Alan McCallum is our guest. We're talking baseball. Alan, I just, diving back into the joy of this, where, you knew about it before the public. I mean, give me a little bit of Tuesday night for you, because you were hooked into this as I was sort of hooked into it. Everybody was hooked in but Mussina himself, who apparently was carrying a gym bag or something, walking out of a gym. There's Mariano Rivera gathered around with the family and all that, and there's Moose just like, oh, man, that's cool. Thanks. That's all right. Appreciate it, man. I can just hear him, right?
Right. Well, they put the cameras on the guys that are sure to get in. Everyone knew Mariano was going to. Probably the most sort of nonchalant guy was Edgar Martinez, watching his reaction. But, I'm sure if you're Mike and you've been on the ballot for 6 years and, there's buzz, but maybe for the first time, but you don't know, going about your business is the easiest way to, get past any disappointment if he had missed by a little bit. It doesn't strike me that Mike is anything but a methodical, sort of routine kind of guy, right? That's what he does on a Tuesday night. That's always been the way he seemed to be. I'm sure that there's who will ever know what that must feel like to get a call, to be told that you have reached the pinnacle of everything you've wanted to do since you were 4 or 5 years old, that you passed all the tests, that you did everything you need to do. And let me say this. All the people that are out there saying Mike Mussina's call is very good, you don't actually understand what you're talking about. Mike Mussina was.
Hold on, Alan. Put your foot right here. Let me push you on up. Let me get the pulpit ready. Let me tap the mic for it. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Because I know
you have my white collar there too. Because I'll have you put that on.
I'm just going to turn my mic down and let you go and have a sip of something here.
The career that Mike Mussina put up in the American League, in Camden Yards, in Yankee Stadium with that incredibly short porch, pitching in Fenway Park with the Green Monster, with the steroid-aided patch brothers of every team in baseball, with the DH at that period of time, to accomplish what he did, to be over 100 games over 500, 2,000 more strikeouts than walks, to win 270 games. The accomplishments go on and on and on in an era where, not now, where wins are completely devalued, which I still disagree with, but we're certainly heading that way with the expansion of the use of bullpens, with specialization out of bullpens, where you walked out. Particularly in Baltimore. The Orioles won with often a smaller margin, and if you gave up a run or two in the 7th or 8th inning, you were going to get a no decision. To do all those things and accomplish what he did, and walk away as a 20-game winner for the first time, when he could have, as I've heard a lot of. Greg Maddux held on. As masterful as Greg Maddux was, and Greg Maddux is probably the best pitcher, and I use that word specifically, that I have ever seen. But he held on to win 300 games. I mean, he was not.
Oh, I said to Feinstein, I had him on, you're talking about the book and Living on the Black. I don't know if you ever read that book, Tom Glavine and Mike Mussina, incredible. And we were talking about personalities and who these guys are. I said, Mussina could have gone 5 more years just throwing a knuckler. He could have been Phil Niekro at 46, pitching for the Cubs if he wanted to, right? And, in the National League where he would have loved to have batted as a 41-year-old guy. You know what I mean? Like, if it were fun for him still, I don't think it was fun for him anymore. I don't think he was bored by it. I think he had a lot of money, that the summers away from the family and where he was in his life, and it just, he could have hung on to try to get a ring. He won 20 games. And I remember talking to Mark a lot during that period of time. He's just like sort of just done, and I don't think he ever regretted it, right? I mean, he's gone on and done what he's done with his life and counted his money, and I hope his body still feels good. It feels like it does. It seems like he's healthy and wealthy and wise and all of that good stuff, so I don't think there's any of that, but man, he could have gone to the National League. If he had been a professional wrestler and didn't have any other life, you know what I mean? If he had been a guy who didn't have a wife and a family and all he wanted to do was pitch, and that mattered to him, and maybe the way it does to Bartolo Colon or some other people. So, Ricky Henderson, he would have come back at 55 if he could have, just because he loved baseball. It was such a part of what he did. Moose could have easily won another 50, 60 games as a knuckleballer and probably not hurt his elbow too much. He probably figured it out and probably gotten beaten around on a couple of nights when it wasn't working and the humidity wasn't right or, the wrong lineup. But he could have easily padded 50 wins. I believe that. I really do.
He could have gone to National League, been the 4th starter on a good team, won 10 games. His winning percentage would have maybe taken a little bit of a hit, but he could have gotten to 300 wins easily. He could have, maybe won a ring. I mean, there are all kinds of things that could have happened. But my impression of Mike was that it's funny. I remember I was there at Camden Yards the first time he came close to throwing a perfect game, and we were on the air. I was on the cell phone in the parking lot the next day. And I was talking about artistry and poetry, and you scoffed at me and said, "Oh, enough of that nonsense! It's a baseball game." And look, I would say that most people would say he was more sort of a precise surgeon than an artist. But on those days when he had it going, and nobody could touch him, I mean, the zone, as they say. Those were really special times, Ness. They really were.
Well, if you go back and look at quality starts and lineups that he faced and where these teams were and who his teammates were and where the fences were and where the baseballs were and where the needles were and all of that, I have never. If I had a ballot, Alan, and you and I haven't gone down this river, but everybody else did on Tuesday night, so I might as well take you on the leash down the dirty river of if you had a ballot, which box do you check?
Sure.
Mussina, check. Schilling, check. Bonds, no check. Clemens, no check. If that's where if you cheated. You cheated the game. You cheated your teammates. You lied to me. You lied to everybody. When we came to your locker and asked you questions, 30 years later, you're still lying about it. You're running a baseball team locally, from what I understand. Everybody lies for you. Everybody does the old point in the other direction and all. I'm not over that yet. I mean, I'm over Bob Irsay, right? I mean, it's not like I can't forgive and forget. We've all been sinned and lied to and whatnot, but I'm not ready to watch Barry Bonds stand on a hill next to someone else and honor him. It's an honor, and I don't want to honor him. Now, that being said, I would vote for Pete Rose, and because Pete Rose didn't cheat to get to 4,200 hits, that's the way he got there. When the fundamental con is that you were cheating to hit 50 home runs, to make $30 million, and 25 years later, you want me to buy your bulljaw? I'm not buying it. You know what I mean?
So, Mike Mussina, if I had a ballot, play that game, I would have checked him. There wouldn't have been a thought in my mind. Edgar Martinez, not only would I have checked him out, I would have campaigned for him.
He would have been the first DH I put in, and we went through Baines a couple weeks ago. But you and I are pretty aligned. I mean, we've spent a lot of time together talking baseball over 25 years, literally, maybe more than most anybody, honestly. Luke and I, obviously, over the last 8 years, but I've had you in my life for a quarter, half my life. And I don't think, between you and me and Mark, I mean, I know you've spent, more time talking to Mark about baseball than me, but Tom Cap, I mean, I have a handful of people, Don Moeller, but not as much him as you guys because of what we did on the radio.
On any random Saturday night, in Baltimore in the mid to late 90s, you would have found Mark Mussina and I arguing in Fells Point at like 2 o'clock in the morning about some stupid baseball thing.
That began at 5 p.m., by the way.
Yeah, we were screaming at each other about something one night, and sober as judges.
I've witnessed it. I believe me, man. You guys almost went to jail.
And a police officer came by and was like, "What's the problem here?" Because I think he thought we were going to go to blows. You're like, "There's no problem."
I had to step up.
He just looked at us. So yeah, I mean, there were many a Saturday night like that before, houses and bills to pay and that kind of stuff. Look, I think that we're aligned about a lot of things, not everything. Look, I know there's a lot of debate about Harold Baines. I check Harold Baines off, and I'll tell you why. And Robbie Alomar on MLB Network stated it brilliantly, that Harold Baines missed something like 130 games because of strikes, and he was about 120 hits shy of 3,000. That as a guy who played with bad knees, who got stuck into the platoon situation, do you really believe that Harold Baines couldn't hit left-handed pitching? Because I know I don't. I absolutely believe he could.
Well, Pennington told the greatest story ever. Pennington said, I gave him a hard time, old man, I used to beat on him, you'd never hit my stuff, literally, and then he said, then I came in with the Red Sox, and he stepped in, and I stepped up, and he doubled off the wall.
Harold Baines could wake up at 55 years old in the middle of winter, get a call, travel 3,000 miles to any Antarctic place, travel on dog sleds, get to the place to be 20 degrees below zero, someone throw a fastball, he's hit it 350 feet to the gap. That's just who he is. And I believe that you look at what he did as a pure hitter, one of the best pure hitters I've ever seen, and I think that belongs in the Hall of Fame. Can I understand people thinking that he's a fringe guy? Sure, I get it, but I'm glad he's in. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are arguably Barry Bonds' best hitter I've ever seen. And if Roger Clemens isn't the best pitcher, he's certainly in the top three.
If you had a ballot, you're voting for them. And by the way,
no,
let me say this: you should have a ballot. You covered Major League Baseball for 10 years. I should have a ballot. I should have a ballot. You should have a ballot. We've earned. I've been sitting here on the radio for 30 years talking about baseball and chasing baseball around. I should have a ballot. But if I had one, I would
never vote for those guys.
You would never vote for those guys. Okay, fair enough.
And let me tell you why. I get. First of all, if you cheat, you're gaining something, and everything requires a sacrifice. I completely understand a fringe guy or a guy who, is trying to make enough money to live for the rest of his life.
I said this same thing. I said, if you're Manny Alexander and your life is living in the Dominican and living that life, and I said, living in the fields and really having a hard life, or being able to come over here and hit 247 for 6 years and go back home with $8 million, I can't. I don't know what to say to that, because my people were in the streets, on Wednesday in Venezuela, and had my life been differently, I certainly could be there right now, if not by act of a lot of people who love me here, and so I get all that, and but all that being said, don't expect me to honor you. You know what I mean? Like don't expect me to honor you.
If you're that guy, you're not going to the Hall of Fame. But you've gained something. And the argument, it's funny because the argument that I hear the most is the one that I actually call upon. I keep hearing people say, well, Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds were Hall of Famers before the steroid accusations came up. Well, that's all you need to know as far as I'm concerned. If you're already going to the Hall of Fame, if you're already great, if you're already making money, then what's the point? The point is purely about ego. The point is purely about being a legend and making more money and being and inflating stats for your own pleasure, for distorting the game in a way that only satisfies you. And to me, look, nobody's going to take away the money. Nobody's going to take away the numbers. Nobody's going to take away the status that they enjoyed. And if there's any ramifications to come from that, it's that I'm not going to honor you in the pantheon of the greatest because you decided that you wanted to cheat the game to be something that you weren't actually. Barry Bonds didn't need to do that. Roger Clemens didn't need to do that. They made choices.
But Barry Bonds wouldn't have hit 750 home runs if he didn't.
Right, but he would have stolen 200, maybe 250 more bases. He would have hit 450 or 500 home runs, and he'd still be considered one of the greatest players. And he would have been a better defender through the rest of his career because he was a Gold Glove caliber defender before that, best left fielder in the game. And by the time he left, this last 5, 6, 7, 8 years of his career, he was a plotter out there. He would have been one of the greats. He wouldn't have had the home run record. He would have been.
Well, he was
really
everything his
Mays in
father.
every sense
Well,
of the
he
word.
was everything his father was supposed to be, which was Willie Mays, right? Literally, right?
Right. So I mean, there were other things, and he would have been rich and in the Hall of Fame. Period. That's what would have happened. He made a choice, and he sacrificed something along the way, and ultimately that's respect. And that with every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel that it is absolutely absurd to then advocate for these people to go into the Hall of Fame. And I feel the same way about Pete Rose. Pete Rose made choices that he knew he shouldn't have done. And whether you consider him a great hitter or a great workman to get to those numbers, he had an addiction that cost him something along the way. And I think that he should be the cautionary tale for everyone going forward, and therefore should not be in the Hall of Fame.
Alan McCallum is here. You can find him, Alan, at WNST.net. We're going to get to some real baseball at some point once it gets going. We have been discussing Mike Mussina into the Hall of Fame. Weekend in Cooperstown, are you in or out, leaning? I'm trying to figure out amongst my friends if it meant a vacation, whatever the word, a friendication. I don't know what that would be. That we would all get together and go do it and come back the next day and be a part of it and sweat it out and try to have fun and laugh at each other a little bit. Maybe play some Stratomatic on the way up. I'm just saying.
I will be celebrating the day before my birthday in Cooperstown, watching Mike Mussina go in.
You're going either way. All right. Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, if I said to my wife, if I could go up there one time and have a really primo experience, you know what I mean? Like as a media member and be in a place where it's not crazy, but it's fun, I'm going to consider trying to do it this summer. I'm not all the way in, but
right.
I'm out on the plank wanting to be pushed into the 5-hour drive up and back and the place being mobbed and it being all Yankeed up and, hey, Yankee! Hey!
So I'm
hey,
glad you
Moose!
mentioned that.
Moose! I'm right here! I don't know that I really want to deal with that, so.
I'll be honest. I mean, I spent a lot of the last 20 years hating Mariano Rivera, wishing he'd go away.
No, Mo, he's a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry.
But you know what?
Just preparing you for July is what I'm doing.
It's easier to appreciate him now that he's retired. He is, no question, the greatest reliever I've ever seen. I remember, coming up with ways that he was going to fail after 1996 when
he did
became
one
the
time,
closer.
Game 7, and Mussina didn't get a ring because that's another story altogether, right?
But, I mean, he is, by all accounts, the definition of class, what you want a Hall of Famer to be, the way he carries himself, his career. And I have no problem rooting for him and applauding for him going into the Hall of Fame at this point. I hate the Yankees. I always will. I'm not particularly fond of their fans. But I have great respect for Mariano Rivera. I have great respect for Edgar Martinez. He's one of my favorite players of all time. And one of my favorite baseball moments is the scene you see all the time with him hitting the double down the line and Griffey scoring. That is one of the most thrilling sports moments I've ever seen. I certainly would pay respect to Roy Halladay. And I'm excited to see Harold Baines go in. So, I mean, there are a ton of reasons to go up for this particular induction. Just, the nod to the DH and the closer that have been of controversy for years in baseball. For the hometown appeal for Mike and Harold. Lee Smith, for that matter, who had a brief tenure with the Orioles, but made it a lot of fun when he was here. And yeah, I mean, it'll be crazy up there. The amount of people. I would enjoy that on a single day scale, as opposed to say 3 days or a week. And the love of baseball, which is a thing that I love to bask in as well. So I mean, there are a ton of reasons to go, and certainly to go up to be there for Mike is going to be a really special thing.
Alan, you and me, we're going to get a tent out there in the woods, just outside James Fenimore Cooper's. I don't know what we're going to do, but I am happy Moose got in. He has always checked my boxes, and for a lot of the folks here this week, it's been fun to talk about some of the glory years. Last century, Alan, back in the 90s when I was a young codger. Hey, man, great having you on. Take care of yourself. I don't know the next time we're going to talk about something happy, but it's felt really good to talk about something happy, and I've kept it mostly happy with you. It's been a little darker in some of the other areas, but you and I have had plenty of conversations about the dark times in Oriole history and the current rough patch we're going through right now. So we'll do that in the future, and how it all started on Mussina, $72 million is plenty of money for Mussina. We don't need to give him any more money than that. Let him go pitch somewhere else. How about that?
It may be a while before we see someone else wearing an Orioles uniform. And hey, maybe he won't wear an Orioles uniform into the Hall of Fame. I kind of suspect that it won't turn out that way. But I know where he started. I know where he spent most of his time, and I have great memories and satisfying memories of watching him as an Oriole, and I'll be excited to root for him whichever hat he's wearing.
And Cito Gaston still sucks. Remember that.
Indeed.
Alan McCallum, Alan at WNST.net. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. It's all brought to you by our friends at BuyAToyota.com. I put up a cool Brad Pennington cutting my hair video on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat. You go check it out. I've had Brad on the show. Mark Mussina will join us. I'm trying to chase down Mike. He's hiding some play. He did some serious baseball stuff. He did some Yankee stuff up in New York. I'm hoping he will come on and tell some old war stories. You know what I should do? I should threaten to play the time that we played quarters on the air in 1992 in the WNITH studios on the radio. If he doesn't do a current, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull that card. Do you really want me to play the old interviews, or you just want to do something fresh? Yeah, there you go. I'll work on that. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, and we will be in Atlanta, Georgia, broadcasting from the Georgia World Congress and Radio Row all next week. Looking forward to spending the week with Luke and you and football people and maybe some baseball conversations as well. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.